Beg your pardon? Meredith, who is this coarse person with the foreign accent?
Right, everyone. Welcome to the Talking Ass. I am your podcast leader, Kim Jong-fun. Some people also call me Danny. Other people call me Daddy. It's up to you, really. Now, these bonus episodes are meant to be fun little, interludes in between guests and stuff. But one of my friends just sent me a lot of rage-baiting content about people debating the Middle East and stuff. And so I'll try not to get any of my anger across in this episode. I'm also shirtless because I am, as promised, becoming slowly but surely very, very sexy again. I know everyone's waiting with a bated breath how me becoming sexy might change the tone of this show, because so far it's been sort of the musings of a fat guy punctuated by interesting guests. Now we're moving into the musings of some kind of classical Greek oracle mixed with maybe a sort of Rasputin-like whisperer of especially upper-class women or men, maybe something in between. Who knows? They're all welcome here. You can follow the show on any platform of your choice. Remember to share with a friend, more likely enemy. We've gotten a few listeners recently, new followers. I'd like to say hi to any new friends. I think some of that had to do with yours truly attending another gathering of the conspiracy that runs the United Kingdom, the Oxford-Cambridge ice hockey match. That's where all the powerful intelligentsia of this country meet, myself included, of course. It was not even close. Cambridge, my alma mater, is just superior to whatever plumbing academy they, for some reason, choose to play sports against every year. We have really fun feedback to go through today. So remember to send your own thoughts, emotions, musings to talkingasspodcast@gmail.com or contact us through the website talkingasspodcast.com. And remember to press those goddamn internet buttons. Follow, rate, review, whatever they all are. Share with your least favorite friend or relative. Why suffer alone? Misery loves company, in the words of the great American poet James Hetfield. Anyway, phew. Previous episode was pretty heavy. I'll admit that. We'd like to thank the foreign minister of the Uyghur government again for sharing a story that probably needs a little more attention. But for those of you who've had enough of war and all that, after this episode, we will have a little more Middle East in this episode. Sorry to all the Canadians. Sorry, eh? Sorry. We'll have a little bit more, and then the next few episodes will be a little bit more fun. Okay? A little lighter-hearted. That's the trademark talking ass balance between the serious and the silly. That's what we do here. Just to show you something silly, I was reminded by Facebook, which is that platform that everyone used around 2007. I had a memory to look back on today, and I wanted to share that memory with you. This is a post I made on the 16th of March, 2020, at the height of the fears of what might happen with the COVID pandemic. I posted a status update. That's what your grandparents are doing on Facebook. They're updating their status for all the young people listening. In times of extreme uncertainty, Mecca is deserted and the Vatican cancelled all sing-song parties. COVID is therefore larger than God. That got quite a few likes. So what old people do on Facebook is they put like thumb things, like pictures of thumbs or pictures of little laughing faces if they like what you said. I know this is all new to Gen X or whatever the fuck you anarcho-communists attacking police on the streets call yourselves. I also added Jesus and Moses are reportedly in self-isolation. No reports on that third guy you're not allowed to joke about. Also, hey, anyone who's missed me during a solo episode, please comment some kind of, send an email or add a comment of support, because normally in these bonus episodes there's a little co-host called Sylvia, but you're getting, this is all me now. I'd like to thank some people for nice feedback to the first 2 episodes of season 5. I'd also like to say to any members of the Chinese Communist Party currently trying to hack this podcast that I hope you learn something, and I hope you have a few laughs as well while you're trying to take down my show. We had a feedback from Coom. Great episode, felt factual and unbiased, which I appreciated. And that was for my rant about the quick overview of the Middle East a few episodes back. We had a friend of the show, Dirty Jussi. He's a bit of a mainstay of these feedback emails. But this point I wanted to read. We listened to every single episode, even the ones where it's just Danny going deep on Shias and Sunnis while Sylvia is asleep. We're still here. We comment. We send emails. We are genuine fans. But here's the thing. What do we actually get in return? Right now, all we have is access to the episodes themselves, which is great, but we'd love a little more transparency into the podcast's journey. Things like which episodes have performed best, how the listener numbers have grown over time, and how the whole process of making episodes has evolved. Just give us something to feel part of the ride. On the content side, Danny's Iran monologue was genuinely interesting. And then he calls me a white Jewish man. Jesus. Dirty, you'll see, you're better than that. But as a white Jewish man covering Shia and Sunni dynamics, the credibility question is always going to come up. I didn't actually insert any opinions in that, so hey, this is unfair. This is unfair feedback. We're also committed to ridiculing bad feedback. This is shit. Stop talking shit. Anyway, keep up the great work and don't forget about your listeners. So, I'll give you something about that. I'd love to actually just release to the individual or even to the nearest 10 how many listeners are for each episode. But everyone's told me from the beginning in the creator communities that that's a bad idea, that's between you and your sponsor and stuff, because then other people can very quickly also find out, other people can calculate how much they're paying you and so forth, and they might want to keep that information to themselves or whatever. Anyway, I don't know what all the reasons are, but actual numbers you're not meant to put out. But obviously we've been at this for a bit over a year now. There's been gradual, steady growth. I'm not a promoter. As you guys know, I actually fucking hate the internet that we're all on right now. That's why it's such a weird thing that I'm even doing this. I definitely hate the screen addiction people have. In order to be discovered as a podcast, you need to produce bullshit, what they call engaging short clips and stuff. And I hate that. I mean, TikTok is the end of civilization and a Chinese psyop. So it's a tough balance to strike. So I'd love there to be more. That's why I need you guys. I need you to share with a friend when there's a good episode that they're like. Just link it to them. In terms of numbers, yeah, sure, we started from scratch, which is, I did do something right. I instantly started with kind of clickbaity episodes, which were the Israel-Gaza war, and then there was the AI stuff, and then there was a trans athlete. These were sort of big topics. The conversations were great and not sensationalist at all, but initially we got quite a few clicks on those episode titles, so I did something right there. And so we instantly, just out of nowhere, had a few dozen people who listened to the first few episodes. I don't know how many of you guys are still here and how many of you guys have been replaced by other people because you then didn't like the follow-up content. I don't know, but it kept gradually growing from there. We went from dozens to hundreds quite quickly, and then much slower. Now we're in this, it's almost like the graph looks like a roller coaster. So topics like the Israel-Gaza episode is still by far the most listen to. Thanks to Yoni for that. If you're wondering who's on top. But then there are some surprising that aren't clickbaity topics that randomly went to the top. And then, for example, there's one actual bonus episode that doesn't even have a guest, and that's my Middle East rant. Was the most listened to bonus episode of all of them. Of course, it's newer, so you'd expect the newer ones to get a bit more than stuff from a year ago when we had just started. But still, it's a roller coaster. Really depends on the episode, depends probably on algorithms, depends on how much the big evil corporations are shadow banning me because I'm controversial. I'm a victim. Remember, of something. It's someone else's fault if an episode didn't do well. When it comes to the recording process, the audio quality still fluctuates. So I'll give you this for free, and this is for any other podcasters who are out there. Maybe this helps. So I try to, but I often fail to sit in a room where the audio would come out naturally okay on my side, and then I just hope for the best on the guest side, right? Because these are mostly remote. The in-person ones generally have pretty good audio regardless. Then I use certain AI software that costs a nominal amount of money per month, not much, to make either, if it's complete horror show on the guest side, bad internet or whatever, to rescue it to the point where it's even listenable. But those are the episodes where you can also, I don't quite sound myself in those, right? You can hear that my voice is a bit more nasal and weird because that's AI. It's been augmented by AI. This AI software doesn't deal with separate tracks. I don't pay enough for that. So it just augments the entire thing and changes my voice in the process. So that's why your audio quality fluctuates a bit. And some of them are really good. Certain guests are pros. They do this all the time. So we're already both sitting in a room where it's all natural and click, 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 easy to edit, no AI needed. You're hearing pretty much the raw product. And in others, it could take me a few weeks to get the episode to the point where I even want to release it. Because all the guests, generally, I've had a nice conversation. I want to release every episode, even if the audio's not great. In the very beginning, you can hear that, for example, content-wise, one of my favorite episodes was talking to Richard, who had been a British paratrooper sort of around the world at the very end of the British Empire. Fascinating stuff, including Northern Ireland and all that. But the audio is not great, and that had to do with certain technology, like interfering with the recording, whatever. I'm learning, but listen, guys, this is still indie music. I am not a moron. I'm not going to start doing fully professionally shot and edited video conversations that then might only get a few hundred people watching them. I'd rather be true to the few hundred who might be there consistently for me and are following the show and consistently come out with something that's at least listenable than trying to do too much for too few people, and in the process I would lose my way and you guys would stop listening. So whatever. We don't need to make big bucks from this yet. One day, one day we're getting there. You're still noticing I'm still using stock music and stuff, but we found a musician and we are gonna do a really cool episode with him, after which we will also somehow put our creative minds together and create a cool actual human, non-AI, human professionally produced intros, transitions, jingles, outros, shit like that. We're working on it. We're coming up soon on 100 episodes. Maybe that could be a celebratory 100th episode. I don't know. But when it comes to like emails and feedback and listener engagement, I know there are way more of you who are listening than are actually engaging with the show. I really appreciate the ones who are, but we need more of those. We also get very few of the ones that end up being the most fun episodes. I know which guests are actually recommendations from friends or listeners, and those end up being the best, like casual vibe and best jokes, but still interesting people and interesting content. And we need more of those. Like, hey, Danny, my neighbor has a fucking idiotic opinion about Brazil. So have him on and see where it goes. Something like that. Those tend to be really fun. Okay, I hope that answered the questions. Oh, and what do you get in return? Well, the point is maybe one day. That's why I've structured it like this, where there's the full episodes and then the shit where I just fuck around while still trying to teach, still trying to have some substance, some interesting information here in the bonus episode. That's the structure because I guess one day an option for a monetization of this thing would be to just put those behind a Patreon, put the bonus content behind a Patreon wall or some kind of other paywall type thing. But that's way down the line. Don't worry. For now, it's all just free. What do you get? You get, like, to this point, probably a couple of 1,000 hours of my labor for free. And the guests, their expertise, opinions, whatever they might be, their gambling advice, whatever they bring to the table, you get it. You get it for free. So don't be a greedy fucker. Anyway, today we did have an actual topic, and this topic, there's been some recent updates to this topic that I actually prepared this for you. Often in the bonus episodes, like my Middle East rant, which did better in the stats than any other bonus episode, often I actually just fuck around and come up with things that are already knowledge in my head. But this time I actually prepared something. And then, of course, the real world hit me hard. So what we do is, like, these islands, right? In most bonus episodes, we love islands, and especially if they're paradise islands with some geopolitical interest or some kind of interesting national resources. Or then this started with that episode with Richard I mentioned, where we noticed that that the British Empire was obsessed with keeping all these paradise islands in the 60s and 70s. Every time there was an uprising, they had to violently quell it. And then we started going down this path, this rabbit hole of all these paradise islands that have had interesting wars or interesting nuclear tests or whatever on them. And now this is the main one. This is the biggest one. This is the most important island, arguably, in the world. One of them. And maybe that quick Middle East overview from a couple of weeks ago, it was a bit too broad, a bit too chaotic, a bit rushed. So now we're going to zoom in and stay hyper focused. Okay. So today we're actually setting sail to a tiny speck of land in the Persian Gulf that has become the center of the entire world right now. It's a coral outcrop, just 8 kilometers long and 4 kilometers wide. And for the Americans, I'll translate, learn the fucking metric system. It's ringed by turquoise water. How do you pronounce that word? Turquoise? Turquoise? Blue fucking waters, okay? Blue waters and battered by relentless winds. So we're at Kharg Island. I'll get it right by the end of this. Kharg. Who comes up with these fucking languages? Kharg Island, thank you very much, known as Iran's orphan pearl or crown jewel, is the beating heart of the Iranian oil empire. And possibly, this is the real flashpoint that could redefine global power struggles in our lifetime. Now let's start at the beginning, like way back, when the world was just a mix of violent empires and explorers wearing those really dumb helmets. Archaeological digs on the island from back then have unearthed remnants of the Achaemenid Empire, a Persian powerhouse from around 550 before Christ, where there are rock-cut tombs in the funerary styles of ancient Palmyra in Syria. As early as 982 AD, that's Anno Domini, which means year of our Lord, the medieval geography text Hudud al-Alam, and that's Arabic for boundaries of the world. Hey, someone send in, was there Are there too many foreign languages in this now? Am I going too far? Let me know. Hudud al-Alam praised Kharg as a prime pearl diving spot, its waters yielding iridescent gems that adorned the necks of royalty from Baghdad to Byzantium. Now, fast forward a few centuries, the island's freshwater springs, which are rare. The Persian Gulf is a saltwater body for the dum-dums out there. Freshwater springs made it a haven for small settlements. By the 7th century, some ruins suggest a Christian monastic complex, likely tied to the Church of the East. That's an early offshoot of Christianity. Think like Council of Nicaea, blah, 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 all that stuff. Look it up. Anyway, there are probably some monks praying amid the date palms, far from the chaos of the mainland. Hark! 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 Was always a refuge, a quiet outside observer as Islamic empires rose and fell, with Abbasid and Mongol traders passing through, swapping fruits, dates, and spices, and venereal diseases. And then, of course, now we get to the fun part. As is customary for our little island corners, enter European colonialism.
Round of applause, everybody.
I hope that was some stock applause audio there for you. In 1645, a Dutch fleet gave the island the name Delft after one of their company's hometowns. They settled there. In 1753, the Dutch East India Company pulled off one of those classic colonial moves that was later repeated and perfected by Leopold's agents in the Congo, for example, and they managed to secure legally ownership of the island in perpetuity. That means forever, in exchange for like a quilt or some shit. Oh, here it is. Granted by the local Arab ruler of Bandar Rig, which is in modern-day Iran, in exchange for a measly 2,000 rupees. Forever. So they built a fort called Mosselstein and a trading post, and they dreamed of dominating Gulf commerce. But of course, like so many other overstretched empires, the Dutch definition of perpetuity, or forever, ended up being about a decade or so. Tensions eventually boiled over, and in 1766, Mir Mahana, the fiery governor of Bandar Rig — Bandar Rig would be my porn name, by the way. Write that down — stormed the fort, expelling the Dutch in a daring raid. Fast forward again to 1838, and guess who? Guess who? The British. The British briefly occupied Kharg to thwart a siege in Afghanistan. Now here you can see the geopolitical chess moves relating to modern day really start happening. Then, in a much darker turn of events, under the Shah Reza Pahlavi in the 1920s and 30s, Kharg became Iran's Alcatraz, a remote exile for political prisoners where dissidents languished in isolation. Their only company was the howling winds and the crashing waves. But to us, even though we're known to be prison perverts on this podcast before, the interesting transformation came in the mid-20th century when oil changed everything. In 1958, under the Shah's modernization push, Kharg was chosen as Iran's crude export hub. Why? Well, very deep surrounding waters, perfect for massive supertankers that couldn't dock on the shallow mainland coast of Iran. American oil giant Amoco built the terminal, and by August 1960, the first shipment sailed out, marking the dawn of Kharg's petroleum era. But then, as usually happens in Marxist revolutions, the 1979 Iranian Islamic Revolution nationalized Amoco's assets. That's the American oil company. Now, why do I call it Marxist? Let's not get too deep into it now, but they are essentially the same ideology. This is The Iranian Revolution is basically the communist Bolshevik, whatever name you want to give these people. It's the same thing. And nationalizing the assets is the wrong word here, as the Iranian nation never really benefited from the oil. As in any other dictatorship or any other of these bullshit revolutions, the revenues are channeled to the people in charge and their nearest cadres. So the Islamic Revolution expropriated the Amoco assets, to be more accurate. And then came the brutal Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s. Saddam Hussein saw Kharg. It's not getting any better. It's not getting Kharg. As Iraq's ticket to victory. So he bombed it relentlessly, turning the island into a flaming inferno in what became known as the Tanker War. Iraqi jets rained hellfire on the island. Can I do this in a southern, I'm going to do it in a southern preacher voice. Iraqi jets rained hellfire on the island. But the ever-defiant Iranian regime kept rebuilding all the oil installations. And right now, for a little quirky little footnote, this is going to blow your mind. If you're a keen follower of news, the news outlets picked up on this. But they picked on it. You just have to trust me. I knew about it before them. And I was going to bring it up to you exclusively. Now, in 1988, a young man promoting his book quipped in an interview that if Iran ever messed with U.S. ships or troops, he would, quote, do a number on Kharg Island. How does that quote hit you right there in the feels today? Because that young man was Donald Trump, promoting his book, The Art of the Deal. Sound familiar? I believe strikes on the island happened as recently as a few hours ago while I'm recording this. So now, shifting to the heart of our story, from the Iran-Iraq War, the Tanker War, and Donald Trump revealing that he's looked at a map before, which, to be honest, for a politician is pretty fucking impressive. Shift back to modern times. It's a forbidden island under strict military control. It handles a staggering 90% of Iranian crude oil exports. This tiny island. It pumps out 1.3 to 1.6 million barrels a day. And the peaks hit much higher than that, 3 million barrels. And most of it is bound for China, which buys something like 90% of Iran's oil, which in turn has something to do with Western sanctions against Iran, I'm sure. The island's 7 jetties are for supersized oil tankers. The massive storage tanks and pumping stations, they make it the artery of Iran's economy, funding everything from the Revolutionary Guards to basic services. But actually, you can scratch the ladder, because basic services is not something the regime has actually been able to supply to the people. There's no water in Tehran. The currency is in free fall, like money is just meaningless. And there are at least localized food crises. And none of that has, by the way, anything to do with the very, very targeted bombing that the Americans and the Israelis and also now Emiratis and Saudis have joined a little bit, but not as much as I'd like, but a little bit. When you really simplify this, China gives money to Iran for its oil, and the Iranian regime uses it pretty much only for the following purposes. A, make themselves and their descendants rich. B, fund terror proxies against Israel and the West, primarily, of course, Hezbollah and the Houthis in Yemen, but also some lesser-known militias in Iraq, for example, and even some organized crime figures as far away as Sweden, from what we hear. C, manufacture drones and missiles to shoot at Israeli civilians, U.S. and Western interests, and its Gulf Arab neighbors. Or selling them to Putin so he can shoot them at Ukrainian hospitals and such. That's what's happening. Iran gets all this from China buying their oil. I think you're now starting to get the picture. In a world where the United States dreams of energy dominance and perhaps fears losing the superpower competition to China, which, if you listen to any of the previous episode about the genocide China is carrying out in one of its own provinces on its own people, well, they don't want to be their people, but China claims them as their own people. You would already understand that this isn't just geopolitics. This superpower fight is very much a life or death struggle for a lot of people, and that includes us in the West. No honest person who grew up enjoying life the way we live it is going to argue that they want China to win this. Anyway, you look at the situation in the Middle East today. It was, of course, already a powder keg with the Israel-Hamas war, the war in Lebanon against Hezbollah, the Houthi disruptions in the Red Sea, and the missiles they fired at Israel, Saudi disagreements with Bahrain, Qatar, and the Emirates, and that jihadist in a suit taking over Syria from the Assad regime, Iranian hybrid operations, even in countries like Jordan, where they're trying to destabilize and overthrow the king eventually there. I could go on for a while with what's going on in the Middle East. Of course, everything was already a shit show. But now, with Operation Epic Fury, or Roaring Lion, if you're Israeli. By the way, when I go to sleep, I call it Operation Snoring Lion. Anyway, now the U.S.-Israeli strikes killed Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, and likely also his replacement, and a bunch of other regime top echelon. Thousands of total airstrikes have pounded Iran, and the Straits of Hormuz are effectively shut down by Iranian threats to mine it or attacking tankers that try to pass. Oil prices have skyrocketed, but we're not quite feeling it yet. I was involved in filling up the tank of a car yesterday, and nobody was shocked by the price in the car, so it's not quite hitting us yet. But, crude oil prices have shot up at least momentarily. Iranian attacks have hit Gulf energy hubs like Qatar's Ras Laffan liquid natural gas plant and Emirati data centers. But amid the chaos, until very recently, Kharg was pretty untouched. Now we're starting to see some damage. Apparently, the oil infrastructure will be left alone. Of course, if this regime were to collapse, any subsequent Iranian government would need this oil revenue. It would be their lifeline. The other thing is bombing any of the actual oil installations could really spike global energy prices, and that would be risking economic and political blowback at home in the U.S., especially as Trump is facing midterm elections this year. Well, not him, his party. The whispers in Washington and all the reported plans for this island. Hark! They're growing louder, but this isn't new. They're echoing an old idea. The Trump administration, if you now think back to that comment from 1988 that Trump made, is reportedly thinking about special forces raids to seize the island, choking the Iranian regime's revenue completely. Then you wouldn't require necessarily a ground invasion to topple the regime and secure the nuclear material, the enriched uranium that they still have. But Iran's exports would stall, production would drop 50% probably, and this would potentially trigger mayhem in the Persian Gulf. Iran could send whatever drones and missiles it still has at Saudi or Emirati oil fields. Even the Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid has argued that total destruction of the infrastructure on the island could help topple the regime. But even much earlier, like even in 1979, during the hostage crisis, the then U.S. President Jimmy Carter, when the Islamic regime kidnapped U.S. diplomats in Tehran, he thought about taking this island, and so did Reagan in the 1980s. But I guess, long story short, this island is the smallest piece on the smaller regional chessboard in a much bigger game of superpower chess. China obviously needs this oil. 90% of Kharg's output goes to China. Would it intervene somehow in the Middle East? I don't know. Russia, another ally of Iran, might ramp up its own exports to fill the voids, and that would reshape some alliances if they start exporting again more to Europe. Europe is really worried about these natural gas shortages from the missile strikes and drone strikes on Qatari gas fields. And as I mentioned, rising fuel prices are generally not good for a party that's already quite split between diehard Trump supporters and then the MAGA people who don't believe in interventionist wars. Rising fuel prices before the election are definitely not good. Most likely, Trump will make sure this war, regardless of what the results will be, he will end it well and truly before the election so that nobody even remembers it ever happened by the time it's time to vote. And what about the Iranians? Well, they've set a few conditions for ceasefire or peace or negotiations. They want U.S. withdrawal, they want regime recognition, and they want the sanctions against them lift. Oh, and they want to continue uranium enrichment for a weapon. And of course, they want any entity called Israel to cease to exist. Considering Israeli jets were flying above him with impunity while he said that, let's just say that we're some ways away from the negotiating table at the moment, if those are their conditions. The other thing they can do if Hawk is now in the crosshairs, they can retaliate by trying to strike Aramco again. That's the Saudi oil company. Aramco was really badly hit by Iranian proxies in 2019, and they could try to pull that off again. And we all know you don't fuck with the Saudi royal family's money, because that's what they like. So, I hope you enjoyed this little venture into Kharg Island. It was once a pearl diver's dream, and now is the center of the world. In the words of a late, great, and much lamented Finnish comedian, it is a mere mouse dropping on a map. But on this mouse shit, someone will slip and fall. Okay. For many of you, that was extremely boring. For some of you, that was perhaps fascinating. The next episode will be a really fun topic. I promise no more fucking war for a while. And I feel so much more self-conscious when I'm ranting at you alone than when Sylvia is here riffing with me. So let's get her back for the next one. In the meantime, follow, subscribe, click the internet buttons, and be lovely to one another.
What with President Johnson practicing escalatio on the Vietnamese, and then the Dominican crisis on top of that, it has been a nervous year, and people have begun to feel like a Christian Scientist with appendicitis. Fortunately, in times of crisis like this, America always has its number one instrument of diplomacy to fall back on. Here's a song about it. When someone makes a move of which we don't approve, who is it that always intervenes? UN and OAS, they have their place, I guess. But first, send the Marines. We'll send them all we've got. John Wayne and Randolph Scott. Remember those exciting fighting scenes. To the shores of Tripoli, but not to Mississippi. What do? We send the Marines. For might makes right. Until they've seen the light, they've got to be protected, all their rights respected, till somebody we like can be elected. Members of the Corps all hate the thought of war. They'd rather kill them off by peaceful means. Stop calling it aggression. Ooh, we hate that expression. We only want the world to know that we support the status quo. They love us everywhere we go, so when in doubt, send the Marines.